Dheeraj, can you hear me? Dheeraj, am I audible?
Audible, sir, audible.
Okay, right. So you have started on YouTube also, no?
Yeah, both of them. Meet and YouTube.
Okay.
Here we have around 25 of them.
Okay, we'll just hold on with maybe 70 or something.
Yeah, okay, fine.
There's an echo coming from your office.
Yeah, I think it's from my office. I'll just see what.
Good afternoon, Veena. Am I audible?
Just check now, sir. Is the echo there?
Yeah, okay, better now.
Okay, ठीक है.
Excuse me, sir. Many are trying to join, but they are not. They are unable to join, sir.
Okay, okay. Yes, sir.
Dheeraj, who's letting people in? Dheeraj?
So who's admitting people? So just asking to keep a lookout for Captain Rajesh Shumi. Yeah. So I think it might be Rajesh Shumi or Captain Rajesh Shumi or Synergy something like that. तो जितना भी सिनर्जी देख रहा है उसको सबको एडमिट कर दो. Especially lookout for Captain. He will join about 5-10 minutes before. और other than students एक 5-10 लोग अगर है तो उन लोगों को एडमिट कर दो. हाँ. नहीं अभी इसमें जो वेटिंग रूम में कोई है अदर देन स्टूडेंट्स. हाँ अदर देन स्टूडेंट्स से तो 5-10 लोगों को एडमिट करो. हाँ एंड स्पेशली लुक आउट फॉर कैप्टन. Yes, join. ओके ओके एंड शाजी सर को भी बुला लेना हाँ वो बुला लिया एंड दोनों क्लास का आया नहीं ना 68 भी शुड बी देयर ना हाँ
Good afternoon, Captain Tom. Your mic is muted, I think.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Captain Naveen, I was looking for everyone. Nobody is seen with the camera on.
Yeah. We just getting things on. Another 10 minutes for the event.
Okay.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Captain Oni, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm Sanjeev here. Captain Nini will be joining us soon. So,
Okay.
can you hear us well?
Sorry?
Can you hear us well?
Yes. I can hear you clearly. I can see you also.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah. Dheeraj, is Shaji sir in?
सर बोल दिया शादी सर को इस ज्वाइन
ठीक है,
शादी सर भी ज्वाइन
okay.
Captain Vinod, this Captain Unni's presentation is slot for 5 o'clock, 2:30 Indian time.
he is joining. I think he has just not joined.
Okay,
Yeah, he'll be joining here soon. Yeah, he's here.
okay, okay. Yeah.
Hello.
You can see it. Captain here. Captain Vinod.
Yes, yes. I just saw Captain Oni just there. I can't see him now.
Yeah, he's coming soon. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
I think they're not able to.
Yes, yes. Good afternoon, Captain Oni. How are you, sir?
Hi, fine. How are you?
Yeah, good. Good.
Phone and then. Doesn't matter, no. What's the issue?
The audio is picking up from my.
I mean, they can hear it, right?
They can hear.
So it doesn't matter. What's the problem?
I'll just run this.
Can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Perfect. Thank you, Chan.
Okay, I think we're ready to start in about a minute or two.
Sure. Only, I have a hard stop at 6. So,
You have the controls. You can stop whenever you want.
Thank you. I hope all of you are keeping well.
Yes, yes. Dheeraj, can you confirm Shaji sir is in?
I think he is still joining. We'll just wait for him.
Okay.
You want some tea? Sure.
Yeah. Shaji sir, can you hear us? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear sir. All loud and clear. All well.
Shaji sir, can you hear me? I think your mic is muted, Shaji sir.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, you're there. So can we start, Shaji sir?
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Captain Oni, can we start?
Sure. Anytime.
Yeah. So, distinguished speaker of the day, Captain Rajesh Oni, CEO and founder of Synergy Group, Dr. Malini Shankar, Vice Chancellor, Indian Maritime University, Mr. Mohammad Shaji, Director, IMU Kochi, fellow seafarers, staff from Synergy Group, faculty and students from Indian Maritime University. Good afternoon and welcome to this guest talk by Captain Rajesh Oni on shipping, future and technology. I think there is no need for, how much technology has advanced and has had an impact in our daily life. I think technology is something that is used across all ages, be it a small 2-year-old kid or a 90-year-old elderly person. Everybody uses technology today. That is how advanced technology has gone into today's world. Yes, technology has also been used or impacted the transportation sector. I believe maybe the airlines industry has embraced technology quite long time ago. Shipping is slightly behind, but definitely technology is something that shipping will soon be, soon be on board shipping, if not now, in the very immediate future. I leave all that to Captain Rajesh Unni. That is why we have gathered here to listen to him. But before we start the proceedings, I request Captain Dheeraj Sinha to just quickly give us an overview of the itinerary.
Good afternoon to you, sir. Thank you very much. We have started this series of guest talk, and this is the second one of the series. So today we have Captain Rajesh Unni from Synergy as our chief guest as a guest talk. So the schedule will be today. We'll start with welcoming the dignitaries by the welcoming of the dignitaries by the director. We will have a message by the Vice Chancellor. Then we will have guest talk from Captain Unni himself. After that, it will be followed by a question answer session, which will be as per the questions. Then we will have a vote of thanks today. So I'll request all the participants to please mute your mic. And if you have a doubts, if you want to ask a question from our guest speaker, you can put it on the chat. We will be monitoring it, and we will be asking him the relevant questions at the end of the session. So I'll request all the participants to please mute, and then I'll hand over to our director, IIM Kochi Director, Mr. Mohammad Shaji. So please welcome the dignitaries. Over to you, sir.
Yes, Shaji sir, over to you for welcome address.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. The guest speaker of the day, Captain Rajesh Unni. So it is expected our Vice Chancellor also. Then Captain Naveen Vinod, other faculties, students, and the IMO staff. Actually, as Captain Dheeraj said, okay, we are in a series of webinars. Actually, the year 2020 was characterized by uncertainty. Years down the line, we shall remember how the world changed this year and the life adventures. You have witnessed unprecedented events in all activities, including education. So the conventional direct interaction has taken a digital form. On top of it, the new education policy of Government of India recently introduced has given a different dimension to the higher education. The Indian Maritime University identify our role in this changed circumstances. The industry and academic institution have to go hand in hand. It is indispensable to keep with them for the quality education and the skilled workforce. We are conducting these seminars under all these circumstances. Within a short span of almost less than 1.5 months, we are conducting the third series of webinar. This is as per our VC Madam's vision, one webinar per month per day. Okay, so we are completing that target. And regarding the industry people who are assembled here, dignitaries are aware of the Indian Maritime University. So no need to have to tell more about Indian Maritime University. But Indian Maritime University Kochi is the youngest campus among all this campus. So with this one, I express my gratitude to the speaker of the day, Captain Rajesh Unni, and his team to spare his time to address our students, to motivate our students. Thank you. Thank you. Hand it over to Dheeraj.
Yeah, thank you, Shaji sir. I think you said it right. There has to be a hand-in-hand collaboration between the university and the industry. And that is exactly why we are having this knowledge series. And as Captain Dheeraj mentioned, this is our second in the knowledge series, and we expect to conduct these kind of guest talks and webinars as a part of our knowledge series. I also extend welcome to Dr. Suryanarayanan, who's joining us from Vizag, Dr. Simon Sir, Captain Tom Joseph from Nautical Institute, Mr. Krishnan Gutti, and all those from the Mariners Society in Kochi. Welcome to all of you. Let me, as Captain One's got a busy schedule, let me just get on with inviting him to speak. But before I invite him to speak, for the benefit of the audience who have assembled here, I just want to introduce or let you know about Captain Rajesh Unni. And for that, I would like to take you back, let's say 20 years back into history, let's say 2000. Who was Captain Rajesh Unni in 2000? I would say he was a seafarer, one among those close to 1 lakh Indian seafarers, or one among those close to 1 million global seafarers. He was just one among those seafarers in the year 2000. Come 2005, 5 years later, who was Captain Rajesh Unni? Captain Rajesh Unni was a young entrepreneur who wanted to do something on his own and started this Synergy Group in 2000, somewhere in 2005. And I'm sure he must have faced a lot of challenges in 2005 because he's starting a new venture, a young captain with a young company, and I'm sure a lot of ship owners would have found it difficult to accept Captain Rajesh Unni and his Synergy Group in 2005. And he had a difficult time convincing ship owners to let those ships to be managed by the Synergy Group. But come 2010, 5 years later, I think Captain Rajesh Unni was one of the successful young entrepreneurs. 5 years down the line, when he started off in 2005 with just a handful of ships, come 2010, that increased in multiple folds. So he became a successful young entrepreneur very quickly, let's say by 2010. Come another 5 years in 2015, I think Captain Rajesh Unni was a name in the industry. People knew about Synergy Group, people knew about Captain Rajesh Unni, people are talking about Synergy, people are talking about Captain Unni, and this all happened in a very quick time in 2015. We talk today in 2020, who's Captain Rajesh Unni? I think he's one among the most sought ship manager in across the world. If things go by what I heard from the industry, the last word I heard from the industry is, how do Captain Rajesh Unni and Synergy Group manage ships at such a low cost and maintaining all the standards? This is the question that the industry is asking. And many big players, many big management companies in the world today, who has probably 30, 40, 50 years of experience, is not able to compete with Synergy Group and Captain Rajesh Unni. So that is what he is over the last 15, 20 years. So let me go back to history. 20 years back, who was Captain Rajesh Unni? I would say he was just not one among those 1 lakh or 1 million seafarers. He was a seafarer who thought differently. He was a seafarer who wanted to do something independently. So he was a man who wanted to have his own way, who wanted to do things differently. And let me tell you, just that thought of Captain Rajesh Unni of wanting to do something different has made him a big name in the maritime industry today, in 20 years later in 2020. Madam Malini Shankar conveys her regards to you, Captain Unni. She was not able to join. She's not able to join now because of a very, very tight schedule of the day, but she has conveyed her regards. And she has a message to all of you who are part of this guest talk or webinar today. And she says, forget it, let's not call it, we can give it whatever names we want, webinar, guest talk, seminar, but she says, this is just a forum where we can listen to one of the most successful Indian captains that we have in Captain Rajesh Unni. So she says, forget about everything, just listen to him. Just be patient and listen to what he has to talk. Captain Rajesh Unni, I leave the floor to you.
Thanks, Naveen. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Shaji. I'm not sure if I deserve any of these. I'm still another seafarer, both from my heart and also from what I do. On my personal life, I think my father was a mechanical engineer. My wife is an engineer. My brother is an engineer who runs an IT company. and my son is also decided to be an engineer. So I'm fortunate to be surrounded by people who are far more intelligent, and I think the same is with the organization as well. I think I'm blessed. I'm thankful, grateful for having people that are far more smarter and better than me. So they challenge me every day, which makes my life a lot more interesting. So I'm grateful for both my personal side and people in my life, and also professional and my friends. So thank you. I don't think that I know much, but I will try to share and share my experience and say what do we think could be potentially interesting. So when I looked at who are going to listen, and I presume a lot of young people. So I thought that maybe I can suggest and share the opportunities and what's available there for each one of us to look at it very differently. Sanjeev, so with me is Sanjeev. Sanjeev is the kind of chief business officer with Alfawari, but his background is also marine. He's been chief engineer, basically also from IIT Kharagpur, and naval architect, and multiple things. So, like I said, I've got some amazing people who kind of helped me along. So I think that was the context. And when I said that, and I said, okay, what are the youngsters? What can we do? And if you look at, you all mentioned about what's happening in the aircraft industry, what's happening in the other industries around us. And I was in an interesting meeting today with the government of Singapore, and we were talking about why is the maritime ecosystem still challenged in adopting some of these things that are already out there, whether it's blockchain, whether it's IoT, whatever are the tech space that are available, and what's the thing about having such an ecosystem. And I was sharing my view to them about it. So one of the things I always believe is that we need a very strong startup ecosystem. And I think the best part of having a startup ecosystem is that it gets great people together to think out of the box. And when you align them with the right equity incentive and instill with them the right value system, then I think it's collectively beneficial to the humanity and the industry as a whole. It doesn't matter who competes with whom, but I think the industry in itself benefits out of such initiatives. So one thing that I love to see is more startups coming up and more people coming together. And I, for one, am very happy to put my hand up and support these young minds or young or old minds with different ways of thinking and come up together and say, okay, let's create something that's not there today. Let's create a pizza that's not there today. So that's why I said, okay, let's then talk about startups a little bit and then talk about what's happening in the industry. So I think that was the theme that I thought through, and maybe we can just go to the next one. You're not able to move it. Don't worry. Just exit it. Just don't put PowerPoint. You can put the other one.
Yeah.
You're frozen.
Well, let me share. Please do let us know when you see the next one.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah.
You move to the next slide.
Yeah, it's just coming on.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see the screen now.
Can you see the slide?
Yes, we can see the slide which says maritime digital transformation.
The next slide. Okay. So we looked at, I was, when we started and also looking at, what startups do typically. So we invested in a lot of startups, not just in maritime. And one guy that came across very interesting was Bill Gross. And I was listening to him, and he said, what are those 5 factors that, we all think is good for innovation? And the first thing was about having a great idea. And I reflected back into my own days, and when we were in a boarding school and said, okay, when we go off from the boarding school, we felt that we needed something that can keep us together. And then somebody called Mark Zuckerberg took that idea out and executed it. So I think great ideas are good. So that was one thing that, initially I felt that it's important to have in innovation and startup. And the second is what Mike Tyson says, right? You can have a great strategy until you land your first punch. And then after that, that strategy goes through a six. So you need a great team to come together and execute on that strategy or the idea. And so the team was the second point that we thought was important. The third is, okay, you have a great idea, you have a great team, but then if you're not able to go and get customers, and if you're not able to go and sell and monetize some of those innovations, then I think it's not sustainable. So that was the third thing. So you have a great business model. And of course, then if you want to scale up, then people talk about funding. Unless you get funded, how do you kind of build scale? How do you build a great company? And the last thing that I also felt was important is how do you time some of these startups? So these are 5 things that people felt was important in any startup or any startup culture. And then when we looked at, many companies, and he looked at a lot of companies, and if you look at what came out the most was about timing. And when you talk about timing, for example, Z.com as a company, just a startup, is something that Bill had invested in 97, 98. And then they kind of disappeared in 2003. And then come 2005, you have YouTube, and you look at what has YouTube done, right? So I think a lot of this also needs to be about timing. And then you see the next is about team, because, okay, what's the team that's behind it? And the third is the idea. These 3 were important, but I thought the funding is 14. Why? Because I think once you start up and you get enough momentum, there is enough money out in this world that will come and fund you. So I want people to get that inhibition out of their minds to say that, where do I fund my startup? If you have a great idea, you have a great team, and your timing is great, and you have a reasonably good business model and your go-to-market strategy along with monetization, then I think funding will follow. And let me also look at some of the companies that you can think about. So if you look at Airbnb, for example, right? Airbnb came at a time where people said, okay, let me rent my home to a stranger. Nobody in this world thought that people will rent their homes to a stranger, right? But come the recession in 2008, people felt that they needed to make a living. So if you look at timing wise, it's amazing. Same with Uber. Uber is another one that escaped, through the escape velocity. And if you look at the timing in Uber, was exactly at the same time when there was a recession or crisis, and people wanted to find jobs or to make extra money to have a great life. So they found abundant drivers to come in. So if you look back at some of these examples, then I think you can get a drift on how timing is so important. The second thing I also want people to understand that, if you look at Yahoo Finance, at this space that's there, Yahoo, it's been there for a long, long time, right? So it's also a search engine. And then look at the next slide. Many years later, Google comes. So there is always room for you to unbundle a lot of stuff and create something that's very unique. So don't get cluttered in your thinking to say this market space is so overcrowded, but find that clear problem statement that you're trying to solve, and don't clutter your thinking. I think if you go broad, you can't go deep. It's better to go narrow, go deep, especially when you're looking at startups. So that's the takeaway that I, at least as my experience, after having spent a few years in this area, that's coming to my mind. And so now, if you talk about timing, and it's something that timing is so important. Why is the timing reasonable in our industry? Okay, so we talked about Netflix, we talked about YouTube, right? So one of the success factors of YouTube was the oncoming of broadband. So there was a clear enabler for YouTube and Netflix to be successful. Similarly, on the Airbnb and Uber, we had a clear enabler in the fact that people needed to make extra money to be able to have a successful life. So there were clear enablers in these two companies that we talk about. And then if you look at our industry, you look at the kind of money that's come in. If you look at e-platforms, we have close to $3 billion. We have in advanced analytics, then we have 155. And this, I can tell you, has gone a lot more now. So there is enough money out there to invest and back real good ideas. The second thing that you may also want to consider is there a need for such a solution? So if you look at the freight markets, so if you look at the freight markets, and then you look at this graph, it basically tells you the revenues that some of these ships were earning, right? But I'm just talking a few dry bulk ships earning. Look at how the graph has moved and the spread. So when that happens, then people start looking, how do I optimize my assets better? How do I utilize my assets better? How can I make my assets most competitive? Because the OPEX and the other part of the P&L is getting more and more important because the revenue side is more and more stable. Of course, there will be these volatile swings once in a while, but if you map this across a longer period of time, this becomes important. So when people are looking at lower margins, then I think it's just like the telecom, what Jio did to all of us. So when the margins are shrinking, then there is a real business need to look at these assets a lot more harder. The other thing that's also coming along is the kind of complexity with the regulations that are coming, whether it's about environment, whether it's about sustainability, whether it's about greenhouse gas emissions, whether it's about your social responsibility. So things like this are coming at such a great speed, So if you look at this chart, it tells you on the right-hand side, it tells you of those regulations that have already come into force. And look at the numbers. And then look at the chart that's coming in. So when all this complexity comes in, when there's so much of uncertainty, and there is so much of regulations that are coming in, there is enormous opportunity for each one of us to be able to bring in our skill set and create something that's unique and powerful. And the bottom end, you see about the GHG strategy, and you know that there's so much of noise, and you must have heard about the recent discussions at IMO and how they ratified, and EU wants IMO and shipping to be part of the emission trading scheme in EU. So there's so much noise that's happening today in the greenhouse gas and the decarbonization front, that this is only going to get more and more difficult, which also means that it's also going to get us more and more opportunity. So that's the second thing that I want to say. And then I think one of the things that I will come down later is also talk about, there's this forum that's come out, Global Maritime Forum, where they collect a lot of CEOs, maybe 70, 100, I don't know, 100 CEOs, and they ask us questions and they say, what do you think are the problems? And I'll show you some slides later on what we felt are going to be the most important. So it'll also give you some insights on what are the things that generally shipping and some of these leaders are thinking. The third one is then, of course, we talked about timing. We talked about whether there's a business need. And then we talked about what's the technology that's available. And we talked just like how we talked about YouTube and how we talked about Netflix. Look at the bandwidth that's coming online. There's so much of satellites coming up. There's so much of bandwidth that's going to explode into shipping and come into maritime domain. This will empower some of those technologies to be more, it will have definitely more access to some of those technologies because of the bandwidth that's coming online. And we see that all the time because of the investments we have made into smart ships. The other thing, that technology that's coming of age, is IoT, big data, machine learning, cloud. All this is just exploding. The kind of tech backing that you have today to some of your ideas is is amazing, I can tell you. When we started Alpha Ori as a company in 2017 with just pulling some wires and looking at data, we never understood how these technologies can fuel some of the ideas and can kind of that graph is that hockey stick is such a nice sight that you will be surprised when you start putting yourself and committing some time. These technologies can certainly help you and fuel some of those ambitions, is what I think. The other thing, so when we launched Alpha Ori, this is a graph that came basically from DNVGL. So we can just run through all of them. So we split what we think from 2017 to what can happen in 25, 30 or whatever. So the green shades are something that we already do. So remote monitoring and diagnostics of shipboard systems. So we have today, close to 150 ships on the platform. Our competitors today are Kongsberg and Wärtsilä. But the beauty is Kongsberg and Wärtsilä are just data plugging companies. But what we're trying to do today is build applications. That's the key. So when we want to build applications, we need people like you and us to come together to be able to build those insights that are going to be helpful for whether it's people on board or whether people on the shore. The second thing that we've done is sensor-based, navigation and operational assistance. How can we build reliability models on machinery? How can we say how much of remaining useful life you have on certain equipments? How can you say what's your sustainability of the ship? How can you say how can I help you with some of the other regulations that are coming in? How can I say that some of those mundane tasks can be just done automatically? Whether it is about, whether you're coming into a port, can you just not set the system such that you don't have to put a fan on recirc mode, for example, right? It can sense there's enough data to tell you the ship is in port. So what can you do with things? The third thing that we are also doing, so we're working with, Singapore, ST Electronics, Singapore Technologies, where they built the command control centers for the airport, for the Singapore airport. So we're building them and saying, how can we build command control centers that can then have multiple feed? And I'll show you some screens of what we're trying to do, right? The fourth thing is that what I think we're building right now is how can we do remote control on certain propulsion systems or certain shipboard systems, right? And last, of course, navigation. And I think that's too far. Autonomous shipping is a little bit too far. There are some projects that are going on with Yara in the Norwegian coast, where they've brought down to 6 people, and that's purely a coastal trade going up and down, and they have a control center. Let's see how it goes. But there's so much of discussion in terms of alternate fuel, whether it's hydrogen, whether it's ammonia, and so when there's so much of opportunity, I just want to, I want all of us to know there is so much that we can do. Bring our contextual and shipboard experience and our exposure and make something meaningful out of it. So that's what I feel on this one. So if you look at this is the command control center that we have now. Of course, what you see is on the left side is the intelligent alerts that will come up that will tell you that multiple things. Say for example, if you have a diesel generator where the exhaust temperature is not at the alarm stage yet, but given the fact that we are measuring a lot of the other parameters, we built a pattern that tells you that maybe there's something wrong. And that will then tell you what could be the probable reasons of why you see that exhaust gas temperature above the band. It's not an alarm condition yet on the ships, but you see that. So how do you monitor that? How do you optimize fuel as a whole? How can you say, okay, this is a ship, and I say I want to go from point A to point B. What's the most optimal voice route and speed and course that I need to do? Integrating this with the VTIS, for example, on the traffic separation scheme and the VTIS here, and tell you, okay, you come back in 1 fathom bank. How can we then tell you what's the anchorage that's going to be available, and take the master, or give the navigating officers and the master the freedom at least to focus on navigation and saying, I know where I'm likely going to anchor, and also then guide you through the other ships and the other navigational hazards that you have. So bring that into this thing. So there are multiple cargo platforms into this. So there are multiple things. And I think this is where we see that more and more people are looking to invest time, resource, and trust into such things, because shipping has for long had very split incentives. So when I say split incentives, let me give an example. So we have a shipyard that's designing a ship, and his responsibility, it gets over once he delivers the ship, right? And then you have a ship owner who contracts the ship, and then he outsources the management to another manager who takes responsibility from there. And then you have a charter or a commercial operator who ends up paying for all this. So we have for long had this split incentives. It's like in the real estate, you have a green building, but sometimes the tenant doesn't have to pay for that green initiative that the builder has put in, right? So I think the split incentives is a challenge, but that also means that there is greater need and there's a greater demand for transparency. And the greater demand for transparency with this push on the internet is so explosive. It's like a genie that's out of the bottle. And I don't think that genie can be put back into the bottle. So there is this change that is already happening. There is this change that has taken place. And I don't think that's going to go back. At least that's my perspective. And then, of course, we talked about, this is part of what we do. And we think that there is still a gold mine of data out there, which is not being, maybe it's captured, but in different forms, and it's not being unlocked to realize the real potential out of the whole thing. And we talked about transparency, and because of transparency, there's nobody that's benefiting. Shipping, unlike aeronautical industry, don't have standardization. So we have very fragmented systems. So when we started Alpha-Ori, one of the challenges for us was to get multiple systems to talk to each other. How do you find and decode that and get them talking in a common language, so that then we put that into our data infrastructure, and then we are able to read this a lot better and then hopefully draw a lot more insights. And then there is always this constant theme of saying, okay, it's a human error, blame the crew. But how are we as an industry supporting the people on board to make better decisions? Are we giving them the right inputs and the right tools for them to be able to then make better decisions? Unless we invest into that, I don't think that we can tell people that it's always only human error. So I think the industry in itself need to invest into some of these, thought processes, is what I feel. And just as a summary, I know that we are running short of time, so we can give time for people to share some questions. But I think no matter what we all do, the customer and the competitor will choose for us. Okay, this is clear. The customer will have the power to choose. Just like you and me decide when we go into a supermarket, what is it that we want to buy? In shipping and in everywhere else, the customer or the competitor will choose for you. And the last thing that I also want to talk about is that, the technology landscape has changed over the years. The competitive landscape has also changed over the years. And the consumer landscape has also changed, because today people, when they want to buy a t-shirt, the younger generation want to know, where was this t-shirt made? Who made it? Are they complying with their environmental and social obligations? So we have a completely different kind of set of consumers today. And the last but most important is also that the speed of change has changed. So what took X amount of time in the past is now a lot more quicker. So I think there needs to be recognition that the biggest inequality, and I'm borrowing it from my son's essay for his undergrad, is that, the biggest inequality will be that those who adapt to change and those who are unable to adapt. I think that's going to be a big inequality. Not so much, there will be income inequality and other things, and affluence and lifestyle, but there's also going to be another inequality in terms of how people can adapt to change, and those who are left behind because he or she is not able to adapt to change. So this is what we think. Basically, I'm happy to take any questions and stuff like that.
Thank you, Captain Rajesh Oni. I think it was quite an insight into the future of shipping, especially for the young minds, who are just about to step on board the ship. Even for us, even for people like me who have sailed quite a few years, it's quite an insight into the future of shipping. And I should say that it's quite different from what we teach here in the university. The syllabus, what we teach here, and what you are trying to show us, the future of shipping is completely different. So it is very good that we get to know what the industry is heading into. I do have a few questions, but then I will request Captain Dheeraj to first put on board the questions that has come in the chat box, and then I will come back and put forward my questions. So thank you once again, Captain Oni, for that wonderful insight into future of shipping.
No, I don't claim to know anything about the future, but I can just share with you on where we are and what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Captain Naveen, and thank you, Captain Rajesh Oni. So this was a session which everybody was looking forward. We knew you had different ways of telling the same thing in very different ways, making making people work, letting the ships run the way they run. But we got some idea of what is there which makes you so successful. But then we have people who still have answers, who still have questions. So let's see, let's take one by one. We have the first question. It comes from our HOD School of Management, IMU Kochi campus, Dr. Jayan. He says, why the IMO is reluctant in adopting the technology like artificial intelligence and big data, etc. That is one part of his question. And second is, IMO is still focusing more on safety and anti-pollution measures. And he goes further and he says that technology in shipping, especially radar and electronic operations, are being improved continuously. What are your observations? Basically, he tries to say is what is overall the condition of the process that IMO is going to take with the inclusion of artificial intelligence, machine learning with respect to anti-pollution measures and the future in terms of technology. Over to you, sir.
Sure. Thanks, Captain Dheeraj. I feel, first of all, what's the function of IMO? Works at the collective will of their member nation. So, no matter what they have, they need to get this ratified by certain member nations for that to be effective. So in that sense, they are also tied in a lot of ways. So I think there is a greater need as an industry to make some of these transformation initiatives from our side itself. And that's what you will see in the decarbonization, for example, that we are trying to do. And why did, as an industry, we talked about carbon levy and carbon tax, and you have the recent Sea Cargo Charter that we've signed up. Most of us have signed up. So these are things that are coming out of the fact that we realize that the IMO in itself also has some limitations. So we as an industry should not look up to the IMO for everything and anything, is my first point. The second suggestion I have is that when the question that is asked about technology like AI or machine learning or big data, of course these are coming, but they are coming in different forms, whether it's about creating a blockchain in bills of lading, or whether it's about bringing in AI and ML in the larger agenda of decarbonization or safety or pollution prevention. Absolutely, these are coming. Okay, so I'm involved myself personally with Joseph, who is looking at these digital initiatives and all that. We had a chat even a month ago, and I think that this is coming. So if people think that this is just rumor and gossip, I don't think. And is it something that the IMO will push through? I don't think so, because then it becomes a whole sort of ratification process. But will the industry push through this? I think absolutely yes. So the thought I have is that don't wait for the IMO to come up and tell us what we want to do. But as an industry, if we believe that we want a greener planet, if we believe that we must focus on safety, if we believe that the social obligations is the right thing to do, then I think it's also a responsibility as an industry to be able to lead some of these transformations.
Yes.
I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, and I think Dr. Jain must be very satisfied, and Synergy Group is also doing its own part in this. So there is second question which comes from a cadet. Now with this autonomous ships coming up, the one question which keeps on coming is what will happen to the seafarers in future in terms of their career?
Okay. I think that whether each one of us will need to reskill, I think absolutely yes. Okay. So if we think, or if we believe, even me, if I believe that I don't invest myself into learning new skills and understanding few things as I go along, then I will be left behind. It's natural. So maybe in those days you started off an engineer and you had a career that you were a mechanical engineer and you continued to be a mechanical engineer until you kind of call it quits, right? But today, I think there is huge demand or requirement or kind of, it's important and inevitable for you to have cross-disciplinary skills to be able to function in a manner that's expected. That's point number one. So do we have to worry about no jobs? At least I don't think in my time that I need to worry about it, which means I think the cadets also don't need to worry. I want instead you to flip and say, as a cadet, how much opportunity do you have, which I didn't have when I came out as a cadet. So today, as a cadet, I have a lot more opportunities in this whole transformation journey because that transformation is happening so quickly. And so please don't worry too much about autonomous ships because it also needs that you can't just have ships alone. You need to have the infrastructure all along to be able to make that successful. Just like bunkering, LNG bunkering, it's taken ages now. And why? Because you need tanks ashore, you need the infrastructure in ports, you need bunkering ports, you need the tanks on the ships to be able to manage. So there's a hell of a lot of changes there, So it's not going to come overnight. It's not going to come overnight. So don't be worried about all this, but be worried that you can't just sit down and say, I did 3 months of cadetship, I got my second mates in this current curriculum, and I will be relevant 5 years from now, which I don't think is possible. And that's not just for a cadet, it's also for me and for most of us. I hope that, but there's huge opportunity. Just don't get bogged down by all this.
And I think we all know that when opportunities always change hands. So the more skilled with time they become, the more opportunities will come and develop. So even I feel that there is not going to be any loss of opportunities with autonomous ships. Thank you, sir, for this answer. Now I have got a question from Captain Vinod Naveen, HOD IMU Kochi campus, Nautical Science. He says, how much is the gap between industry requirements and regulations? And is that stalling the development? The industry requirement and regulation, and is it affecting the development?
So it is there, absolutely. But it's there in many other fields also. Say, for example, if you look at our teachers, right, in our schools or, many of the schools. So whether it's high school or elementary or primary, you have teachers who have learned physics, math many years ago and are coming and preparing the kids into a future which is very different from what it was, right? So in some form, it's a blind leading the blind. So obviously the same thing happens in our industry versus what are the expectations from the industry versus what are the kind of requirements and regulations that are coming. Absolutely, yes. So I think there is a greater need for a industry academia connect because we need to prepare the right skill set in people for us to be then part of that transformation. Because one of the things that we in India have been successful is because we had a great schooling system, and as a result, we produce great mariners. But if we don't pivot and if we don't adapt to the newer needs and we continue to do things exactly the same way, then you will have similar results. It's simple as that. Today, like I was talking to someone here, and if I have to stay in Singapore and do exactly the same thing that someone in India or China or Vietnam or East Europe can do it far more cost effectively, why will anybody ask someone to do it here? I don't think that anybody will do. So I think that we have to constantly find ways to do different things differently. We can't sit back and say, I will do similar things similarly and expect different results.
Thank you, sir. Now we have a question from Cadet Johan Melvin from Nautical Science. He says that operating margins are anyway reducing, and with IMO coming up with a new regulation, it is further reducing the margins, that means commercial margins. But going towards automated ships in future, will the operating cost be reduced more or no change? Your views on that, sir?
So if you look at, what are the bigger costs? One, the biggest cost is fuel, right? So how do you optimize fuel? There is a huge amount of effort that's going in. The second thing that's going to affect, obviously, is the wage component or the financing. Of course, the financing is getting more difficult because, with the Poseidon principles that most of us have signed, now the banks are also expecting you to comply with the ESG requirements, environment and other requirements. So sustainability agenda has to be baked into your new business model. So which means that the financing will get tighter. So I'm just talking about the cost items in your P&L, right? And of course, then there is the crew. But is that the bigger chunk that everybody want to go after? I don't think so yet. There are other things that we can go after. Simple things like when you are having to run, 2 generators, are you running 3? Why? Because today there's so much of technology available that can kind of, like a Google smart home, right? It starts predicting when you walk in, depending on the outside temperature and the kind of, pattern that is built, it starts telling you what to do. So those are the things that will first come. Okay. So I think what people are going to do is to find newer ways on optimizing the assets better, utilizing the assets better. Like, for example, we were today talking in Singapore, is that there are multiple vendors and suppliers, and they were asking me what my thought was on it. We are building a ship to show interfaces we are building now. Okay? Because we have the smart ships, how can we digitally plug that into the shore-based systems? Okay, so that we have just-in-time arrivals. So a ship comes into anchorage, then you get everything and come in at the same time. So those are the quick, low-hanging fruits that people will go after. So I again feel that we should think out of the box. Don't think in a way that, will my job go away, or is it going to be are they going to reduce the margin so I get paid lesser? That's not the way I hope that we look at things. We look at things that these are the problems that are there. How can I create value? Don't get into the business of driving costs, and that's always a race to the bottom. Think about how can we create value. And once you're convinced that there is enough value creation, people will be happy to give you ways to capture that value creation or monetization or whatever you call it. So I think don't worry too much about this. The areas where we need to focus is on optimization, utilization of assets, and all that. That's a big low-hanging fruit,
Yeah. So I think you must have got your answer where it is like their opportunities will keep on increasing, so nothing to worry. And
Captain.
Yes, sir.
Captain Dheeraj, I have one.
Sir, I would like to say good afternoon to Director IMD Kochi campus. Sir, you can go ahead.
First of all, I thank Captain Rajesh Unni for the great opportunity given for all of us, including the students. It is a great help for the campus. And it is also, we are all fortunate to have this lecture and listen to him. A person made himself to that heights and sharing his experiences. I thank him for that. And I have one question for in this regard. Towards this Atmanirbhar Bharat of Government of India initiative, where we stand in terms of the technology, the ships availability, or the business available for the maritime sector. Very briefly, if you can indicate, we will be grateful to you.
So Atmanirbhar India is about being self-reliant, right? It's being about self-reliant. So if you look at the entire logistics and supply chain in the country, there's so much that we can optimize. There is so much, you know. Even in Cochin and outside, it's just like even countries like Singapore, simple things like, you know, trucks coming into shopping malls and being in the parking bay and creating chaos. Similarly, ships coming into the port. You know, there's so much you can do, port optimization, just-in-time arrivals, talk about, you know, inland waterways or how you can optimize the cargo carriage, bring in more sustainable agenda. But these are things that there's innumerable number of applications you can build around this. You know, there's tons that you can do actually. Surveillance, Coast Guard. How can we help Coast Guard in better surveillance? There's so much of technology, so much of data out there. We have the maritime experience and expertise to do this, right? There are similarly conversion projects, ship repairs. There's so much that's happening around the other parts of the world. Why can't we have so many mariners, we've done through so much of stuff. Why can't we take some? The question is execution, Sarji. The question is belief, execution. That's where, you know, I think that sometimes we in India, we're struggling. I don't think there's an issue with the lack of ideas. I think people have ideas.
Okay. Where does it, where this lacuna comes in? Is it policy or the execution, or industry is not prepared for it? What is the reason for it?
Sir, I don't know. I hope my parents or my wife and son is not listening to this. I don't believe in rules, in the sense that I think that if we have to depend on policy to guide us, I feel that, you know, what's the big deal? But if you have a great product, people will acknowledge and people will adopt, you know. When iPhone has certain applications and when you believe that application is adding value into your life, you just take it, right? You use it. So I don't think that we need to constantly depend on policy in itself. But yes, does policy help you? Of course it does. But I don't think that we need to have an over-reliance on this. The place where I feel we need to work on is to taking that idea into then working it in smaller milestones and start small. Start with one problem statement. Like I said, if you go narrow, you can go deep. And that's what startups don't, you know, they don't starve, they drown. I don't know if that makes sense, you see. It's not because of lack of fund or policy, they starve. No. If they fail, it's because of multiple other things. So I think that there is enough still. With the constraints, there is enough we can do. While we can always make policy amendments and all that, that's good. But is it a must-have? I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Dheeraj, I think we let one more question because we need to let Captain Moni go, as he's got a meeting at 6 p.m. Singapore time.
Thank you. Right.
Okay, so one last question, very interesting in the sense as well. It is from Mr. Krishnan Kuti. He says research is not a commercial operation, but the result of research will be put into commercial applications. So when we invest money on the research, is it not making, or it is not saving the money spent? He gives an example of autonomous ships, that the money we spend on research for autonomous ships will ultimately save the expenses on the autonomous ships. Your thoughts, sir?
So R&D is an absolute must. Okay. So if there's one thing that we as an organization have done is for the many years, we have reinvested a lot of our money back into the business, back into R&D. So without R&D, there is very little progress. So it's a call. There are companies who take decisions on how much percentage of the revenue, not profit, they allocate to R&D. You know, it can be 4, 5, 10%, depending on what space you are. So I'm a big believer of R&D. And if there is one thing that we have been lucky, or God has been kind, and whatever we said in the past, so we have now 350, close to 400 ships, you know, maybe there in the league, and where if people trust us is because we have moved away from the norm. And the only way we could move away from the norm was because of our commitment and belief that R&D is critical to success. I think so. So I'm a big believer in R&D. So and I think it's fair to allocate certain cost. And you know, like sometimes it may not you know, yield results immediately, but it also builds a culture. And like people say, culture eats strategy for breakfast. You know, so it's important to have that culture.
Thank you very much, sir, and thanks. I'll thank everybody for asking the questions, and your reply must have satisfied more than what they expected. So I'll just hand over to Captain Vinod Naveen for any further instructions.
Yeah, thank you, Captain. I think you know, the fact that there are more number of questions from cadets, it itself is a proof that this has been a very interactive session, and I can see the difference in the sessions that we had, and with this one we have almost spent half the time question answering, and that is where you can actually bring out, you know, what is in the minds of the young minds especially. And I think Captain Rajesh Unni is an expert on it. He has delivered about 25-30 minutes. He showed us a PPT, and that could bring out a lot of questions from all ages. We are sorry that we can't take too many questions, as we need to let him go. But I do have a question. Probably I'll ask the question and then we will take it offline because of the shortage of time. Now, Captain Unni, you spoke about artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, big data, which means, you know, what is it that we at the university needs to do to prepare the young minds to meet up with the future industry requirements? And certainly what we're training them now is not on any of these topics. So definitely, I think we need to do something different at the university. Do you agree with that, Captain Unni?
Absolutely, 100%. 100%. And you have a unique advantage today. If you can do this, you have a clear head start. You know,
good evening.
You have a clear head start.
Good afternoon, sir. Tell me, sir. We should tell sir,
I think Shaji sir, your mic is. Can you? Okay. Please go on, Captain Unni.
So I think that absolutely yes, and there is a huge opportunity in that because the landscape, like I said, has changed on the ships. You know, and how can we have a better seafarer? This is a great opportunity. And is some of those old curriculum relevant? I don't think so, to be honest. You know, but if there's one thing in all this startup and all this excitement, and my humble request is, please do not compromise on your value system. You know, we will all fall, and it's important how we get up. And so, while all this is good, ambition is great, everything is good, but the key to anything is to be a good human being, and is to be able to create impact to the society that you're surrounded with. So I saw one cadet's question, and what are the qualities? So if I can suggest one quality or one thing that you should take away from this is, please be a good human being, stand by what is right, and stick to your value system. I think in the long run, you will reflect back and feel proud and happy about at least that one thing. So that's my humble request. But thank you all for your time, and you know, I'm so grateful for everything. Thank you.
That's very true, Captain Unni, because they say the career to be a good human being is the one where there's least competition. So you said it right. I will come back to you. When I say we as a university would definitely like your help in helping us in setting up the future syllabus, especially in those areas that you mentioned. I will come back to you offline on that. One last question before I let you go, Captain Unni. As I gave the audience the timeline, of what was Captain Unni from 2005 to 2010 to 20. Where can we expect Captain Unni in 2025?
I have no idea in 2021. But if you ask me, I would be most happy if I can spend a lot of my time in the social space and try to create more impact in the lives of people, because I personally feel that I'm extremely super fortunate to have so many friends, so many people around me that are great. So I think as a part of that obligation, it also means that I must try and create most impact in people's lives. So in 2025, I hope that I can do that a lot better than I'm doing in 2020.
We wish you all the very best. And one thing that we know what Synergy has, or the secret of success of Synergy, is a good team and the teamwork. So we wish Synergy Group and Captain Rajesh Unni all the very best. I should tell the audience, it's been, I just checked my WhatsApp message with Captain Unni. I've been following up with him for this webinar for almost 2 months. It's been a very busy schedule for him. Even now, it's been a very busy schedule, but finally to take the time out and come and talk to our cadets. And the biggest takeaway for the cadets is the assurance that you give that you're not going to lose your jobs. If you can acquire the skill sets in the right area, you are the most wanted person. So that's the biggest assurance what Captain Unni has given to cadets. So thank you once again, Captain Unni. Thank you to all of you who have attended this session. A great session, and we look forward to more such sessions in the future. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Anil.
So thank you, Captain Dheeraj, for conducting these sessions. Captain Tom Joseph, Mr. Krishnan Gutti, Dr. Simon, Shaji sir, Suryanarayan sir, and all the students, for coming and participating in it. And when you hear it from the industry themselves, a lot of you had this question on autonomous ships and jobs and etc. But when you heard it from somebody like Captain Unni, who's heading one of those top management companies with over 500 ships and probably 10,000 seafarers, when he says that you don't have to worry, but you can't just sit idle and say that you are going to get a job simply if you sit. No, if you are willing to put an effort, and especially additional effort in additional areas, then your skill will always get you a good opportunity. So with that, Captain Dheeraj, can we end the session?
Yes, sir. Well, Captain Unni has left, and we have been very fortunate to have him here, Captain Unni. And then certainly there is so many things to be said, so many things to be done. We have to thank so many people who have come here, Captain Unni, director, participants from the other campuses, our own campuses, Captain Vinod yourself. So we have been doing this. This is the second of the series of the webinar which I have been conducting. The first webinar was as successful. Second we have got. And this whole operation needs lot of teamwork, lot of work, which includes even from the people who are backstage, not to be seen on the screen, the admin department, the IT department. There is lot of support which comes from nearly everybody. So you cannot thank enough everybody. So I would just like to thank each and everybody who has attended it, who has participated, and who have helped us to present this seminar on the guest talk second time as good as it was done the first time, maybe better. And from now onwards, we'll try to be more better, do it much better than every previous time. Thank you, sir, from my side.
Thank you. We will close the sessions. You can close the session, Captain.
Yeah, okay, sir. All the participants can leave, and thanks for all of you to be here. We can all log off, sir. Thank you.